It is 2 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Oh yeah, the dreaded Tuesday afternoon.
Right. You have the to-do list right in front of you. You technically have the time to do it. You know exactly what the steps are.
Mhm.
You might even actually want the result of the work. But you are just sitting there staring.
The infamous wall. I mean, I think everyone knows that exact texture.
It's like your brain has completely disconnected from your hands. You pick up your phone, you put it down, you open a tab, you immediately close it.
It feels like hitting a literal physical wall.
It really does. And, the standard playbook here is pretty clear for most of us. You grab the third coffee of the day.
Right, or the fourth.
Exactly. You put on that aggressive techno playlist, you grit your teeth, and you just tell yourself, just push through it.
Because that's what we're taught, right?
Yeah, we've been trained to believe that if we just had enough willpower, enough discipline, we could just force the work to happen. But today, we are doing a deep dive into a source that suggests pushing through might actually be the single worst thing you can do in that exact moment.
It is definitely a counterintuitive take. We're looking at the F.I.A. framework, specifically a piece called Regulating the Nervous System for Alignment. And I will be honest, when I first looked at that title, I thought we were heading into some fairly abstract territory.
Right, because alignment is
It's a buzzword.
It is a massive buzzword that gets thrown around so much in self-help circles.
Exactly.
I was going to say, it sounds a little soft, like, oh, just get aligned and your spreadsheet will magically finish itself.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Right. I'm naturally skeptical when I hear that kind of language because my mortgage does not care about my alignment. It cares about my output.
That is a very fair critique. But what makes this framework so interesting and why I really think it's worth our time today is that it isn't talking about alignment in a metaphysical sense at all.
It's talking about biology.
Yes, pure biology. It argues that what we constantly label as procrastination or laziness is actually a physiological event happening in your nervous system.
Okay, so you're saying when I'm doom scrolling instead of working, it's not a character flaw. Because it certainly feels like one.
It feels terrible.
Feels like I'm just fundamentally failing to be a functional adult.
That is the internal narrative we all have.
Ah.
But the F.I.A. framework argues that the override method—
Override, meaning using willpower.
Right, using sheer force of will to compel action. It fails because it completely ignores the hardware reality of your body. The core thesis of this whole text is this: you cannot think your way into alignment. You must regulate your way into it.
You cannot think your way into alignment. I have to say that is deeply frustrating to hear.
Because thinking is your go-to move.
It's my primary tool. I sit there and I have a full-on mental argument with myself. I use logic. I say, okay, if you do this now, you can watch TV later. I try to bribe myself. I threaten myself. I am actively trying to use my brain to fix my brain.
And that is exactly where the conflict lies. You are trying to use the prefrontal cortex.
The logical part.
Yes, the logical thinking part of the brain. You're trying to use that to control a response that is happening in the autonomic nervous system.
Ah.
It's a complete mismatch. The source describes this as a fundamental conflict between thinking and regulating. If your nervous system is in a state of threat, no amount of logic is going to talk it down. You're essentially trying to negotiate with a reflex.
Okay, let's drill down into this state of threat concept, because usually when I'm hitting this 2 p.m. wall, I'm sitting in a very nice ergonomic chair in a climate-controlled office.
Right. No immediate physical danger.
Exactly. There are no tigers chasing me. Why on earth would my nervous system be in a threat state?
This is where we have to reevaluate how the modern human body defines safety. It is not just about physical survival in the wild anymore. The source introduces this concept called protection mode.
Protection mode.
Yes. It states that your nervous system shifts into protection mode when, and I'm quoting here, your choices contradict your authentic rhythm.
Authentic rhythm. See, okay, that's where you lose me a little bit. That sounds like something you read on a bumper sticker. What does authentic rhythm actually mean biologically?
Think of it purely in terms of capacity and pace. Let's say you have been running on high cortisol adrenaline for 3 weeks straight.
Sounds familiar.
Right. You're ignoring your sleep cues, you're eating at weird times, or ignoring hunger, forcing focus when your brain desperately needs rest. When you do that, you are sending a constant, unrelenting signal to the body that you are in a crisis.
Wow, okay.
Eventually, the nervous system just slams on the brakes to prevent you from burning out completely. That wall you hit at 2 p.m., that is the biological brake pedal.
So the body basically goes, all right, you clearly won't stop, so I am going to physically make you stop.
Exactly. That is protection mode in action. And the symptoms, the source lists are really specific. I think they perfectly validate what you were saying earlier about staring blankly at the screen. They list fatigue, obviously, but the major one they highlight is brain fog.
Oh, brain fog is the absolute worst. It literally feels like my head is just packed full of cotton wool.
Well, let's look at the actual mechanics of brain fog because it's fascinating. When the sympathetic nervous system kicks in,
That's the fight or flight system, right?
correct. When
Uh,
that kicks in, your body redistributes its resources. It sends blood and energy to your major muscle groups so you can physically run away or fight a predator.
Makes sense.
But to do that, it actually diverts resources away from the prefrontal cortex.
Wait, really? So I literally have less brain power available, like biologically less.
Physiologically,
Hmm.
yes. The executive functions, things like planning, creativity, complex decision-making, those are very expensive energy-wise.
Huh.
If your body firmly believes it needs to survive an imminent threat, it shuts those expensive cognitive systems down to save energy for the physical escape.
That is wild.
So when you try to push through brain fog, you are attempting to do high-level cognitive work with a brain that has effectively been taken offline for maintenance.
That explains so much. That explains why the work I produce during those 4 sessions is usually pretty terrible.
It is why you read the exact same email 3 times in a row and you still have no idea what it says. The hardware isn't supported for that task in that specific moment.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Life is stressful. Work is demanding.
Absolutely.
If every single time I get stressed out, my brain goes into protection mode and shuts down, I'm never going to get anything done. Isn't there a real danger here of just coddling ourselves? Sometimes don't you just have to get over it?
That is the million-dollar question right there, and the F.I.A. framework addresses this head-on. The problem isn't actually the stress itself. The problem is our reaction to the stress signal. When we feel that fog or that internal resistance, our immediate instinct is to override. We panic. We drink more caffeine, which just spikes cortisol even further.
Yep, guilty.
We criticize ourselves harshly, which adds a layer of emotional stress. We are essentially pouring gasoline on the fire.
We treat the check engine light like it's the actual problem instead of checking the engine itself.
That is a brilliant analogy. And if you keep driving down the highway with the check engine light flashing, eventually the car stops running entirely.
Right.
The source argues that protection mode is an active signal of misalignment. It is your body saying, we are not safe to proceed. If you try to override that, you're actively fighting your own biology. And biology usually wins.
Okay, so if willpower is completely the wrong tool and pushing through is actually making the brain fog worse by increasing that internal threat level, what is the alternative? Because realistically, I can't just take a nap under my desk every time this happens.
No, you can't. The alternative they present is shifting from protection mode into what the source calls presence mode.
Presence mode, again, sounds very zen.
It does sound a bit mystical, but let's ground it biologically. Presence mode is essentially the engagement of the parasympathetic nervous system.
The rest and digest system.
Yes, or more accurately in this context, the social engagement system. This is the biological state where your heart rate lowers, your peripheral vision widens, and crucially, blood flow actively returns to the prefrontal cortex.
So presence mode is really just being calm.
It's deeper than just being calm. It's being regulated. The source makes a really vital distinction here. It says that in presence mode, things like clarity, vitality, and motivation are natural byproducts.
Byproducts, meaning you don't actually generate them directly.
Exactly. You don't chase the cat. You just put out the food,
Yeah.
and the cat comes to you.
I love that.
We spend so much energy trying to manufacture motivation out of thin air. We try to hype ourselves up with videos or quotes. But this framework suggests that motivation is actually the default natural state of a healthy, regulated organism.
So if you aren't motivated, it's not because you're broken.
Right. It's because you are actively being blocked by protection mode.
That is a massive shifting perspective. Instead of saying I need to find motivation, the thought process becomes I need to remove the interference.
Correct. The immediate goal is not to get the work done. The immediate goal is to get regulated. Once you are regulated, doing the work becomes a possibility again.
Okay, I am buying the theory. The biology makes total sense to me. If I am in fight or flight, I physically cannot write a complex script.
Right.
But how do we actually do this? Because when I'm in that downward spiral of I'm lazy, I'm behind, I'm failing, telling me to just get regulated feels a lot like telling someone who is actively drowning to just swim better.
You're completely right.
Yeah.
You cannot think your way out of it. Remember, you need a physical intervention. And the source provides a very specific tool for this. They call it the frequency body reset.
The frequency body reset. Honestly, it sounds like something I would need to pay $500 for a weekend retreat to learn.
It really does, but it's actually incredibly accessible. We do need to look at the mechanics of why it works, though, so we don't just dismiss it as simply taking a deep breath.
Please do, because if the grand advice here is just breathe deep, I am going to be severely disappointed. I breathe all day long. It has not cleared my inbox.
It is definitely not just breathing. It's about how you are intentionally manipulating the vagus nerve.
Okay.
The source describes a practice that focuses entirely on the ratio of your inhale to your exhale. The text emphasizes a specific cadence, where the exhale is significantly longer than the inhale.
Why does the exhale matter so much? I always thought taking a big, deep inhale was the important part for relaxing.
That is a huge, very common misconception. The inhale is actually sympathetic. It slightly accelerates your heart rate.
Really?
Yes. The exhale is parasympathetic. It slows the heart rate down. It engages the vagus nerve, which is this superhighway running from your brainstem all the way down into your gut.
I've heard of the vagus nerve, yeah.
So when you deliberately extend the exhale, say inhaling for a count of 4 and then exhaling for a slow count of 8, you are physically sending a bottom-up signal to the brain that says, we are safe.
You are hacking the system.
You are manually overriding the internal alarm system. The frequency body reset isn't about relaxing in the sense of chilling out on a beach with a drink. It is a physiological toggle switch.
A toggle switch.
Yes. You are forcing your diaphragm to move in a way that directly stimulates the vagus nerve. That stimulation releases acetylcholine, which acts as a literal, natural tranquilizer for your heart rate.
Okay, that is so much more concrete than just breathe. It's using the mechanics of the body to send a safety code up to the brain.
It is exactly that, a
Yeah.
command code. And the source emphasizes that you have to do this before you try to return to the task.
Right.
You literally stop, you push back from the desk, you step away from the screen, you perform the frequency body reset,
Right.
and you wait for the physical shift.
What does the shift feel like?
It's the moment your shoulders drop an inch. It's when your jaw suddenly unclenches and you realize you've been grinding your teeth.
Yeah.
That physical release is the sign that you have successfully moved from protection back into presence.
It sounds so simple, but I can totally see why it's incredibly hard to do in the actual moment. When I'm stressed out, stopping feels genuinely dangerous. My brain is screaming at me, we do not have time to breathe. We have to work right now.
And that screaming voice, that is the voice of protection mode. It is the voice of sheer panic. But think about the math. If you don't stop, you end up spending 3 hours doing 20 minutes worth of subpar work.
Yeah.
If you take 5 or 10 minutes to physically reset your nervous system, you might sit back down and get that hour of work done in 40 minutes.
It really is the classic analogy. It's the difference between hacking away at a tree with a dull axe because you're too busy to sharpen it versus taking 10 minutes to stop and sharpen the blade.
It's a classic analogy for a reason. It holds up perfectly. But in this case, the axe is your central nervous system.
I want to circle back to something we touched on near the very beginning, this idea of the authentic rhythm.
Yes, let's go there.
Because we've talked a lot about how to fix the immediate slump at 2 p.m., but doesn't this entire framework imply that maybe we shouldn't be hitting the wall this violently and this often in the first place?
This is where the source really challenges us on a much deeper structural level. It says the protection mode is repeatedly triggered when your daily choices contradict your authentic rhythm.
Right.
If you are constantly having to use the frequency body reset just to drag yourself through a standard Tuesday,
Yeah.
you really have to step back and ask why you are living in a constant state of biological threat.
That is the scary part of this deep dive for me. It suggests that maybe the problem isn't just that I lack stress management skills. Maybe the actual problem is the fundamental way I am working, or even the work itself.
It forces you to take a hard look at the inputs of your life. Are you trying to work in a way that is fundamentally biologically misaligned with who you are?
Give me an example of that.
Well, are you constantly forcing deep, highly creative work at 3 p.m. when your specific body naturally experiences a massive dip in energy?
Guilty again.
Or are you continually saying yes to projects and obligations that your gut, which is literally tied to your nervous system, is screaming no to?
So that afternoon brain fog might not just be a simple case of I'm tired. It might be a full-on biological protest.
A biological protest, exactly.
Yeah.
The source is really pushing us to stop viewing these symptoms as mere inconveniences that we need to medicate with caffeine or override with willpower. We need to start viewing them as crucial data.
Data.
Yes. If your body systematically shuts down every single time you open a specific project file, that is powerful information.
That is heavy. But honestly, it's also incredibly empowering because it moves the narrative away from I am broken or I am lazy to I am simply misaligned.
Exactly. And alignment is fixable. Broken feels like a permanent personality trait. Misalignment is just a navigational error. You can always correct your course.
But correcting that course absolutely requires listening to the signal first rather than just frantically trying to mute it.
The overguide culture, the hustle culture we all live in, teaches us to ruthlessly mute the signal,
Hmm.
to numb it out, distract ourselves from it, or force it down. The alignment culture, what the F.I.A. framework is proposing, teaches us to pause and actually decode the signal.
Okay, so let's synthesize this and bring it down to a really practical level for everyone listening. You're sitting at your desk. It is the afternoon. The fog rolls in. You feel that familiar, heavy resistance. Step one, catch yourself in the act of trying to override.
Exactly. Notice the physical tension in your body. Notice the harsh, negative self-talk starting up. Simply acknowledge, okay, I've entered protection mode.
Step two, do not reach for the coffee. Do not scream at yourself internally.
Step 2 is to actively apply the frequency body reset. Step away and use those breath mechanics, specifically focusing on that long, extended exhale to manually toggle your nervous system back to safety. Send the signal to your body that there is no tiger in the office.
And step three, wait for the byproduct.
Yes, wait for the clarity and the motivation to naturally return on their own. It might take 5 minutes, it might take 20 minutes, but working from a regulated state is truly the only sustainable way to do high-quality work.
It's really about trust, isn't it? Trusting that your body actually wants to engage and do the work. It just desperately needs to feel safe first.
We are naturally creative, naturally productive creatures. We don't have to force that out of ourselves with a whip. We just have to stop actively blocking it.
That is a really hopeful place to land. It completely takes the war out of the work.
It really does. It changes the whole paradigm.
Well, before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a thought that has been kind of nagging at me ever since we started digging into this material. We spent some time talking about authentic rhythm and how chronically avoiding it is what triggers this protection mode.
It is the absolute core of their philosophy.
It really makes me wonder about the things we force ourselves to do for years on end. If you have been living in override mode for a decade, if you have been aggressively pushing through brain fog every single day of your professional life, is that actually grit? Or is that just a tragedy?
That is a profound question to ask yourself.
What would happen if you finally stopped listening to your thoughts about what you think you should be doing and actually started listening to what your nervous system is screaming at you? It might be terrifying to face it, but it also might be the very first time you are actually telling yourself the truth.
And that truth might just be the actual beginning of real alignment.
Definitely something to mull over the next time you find yourself staring blankly at a screen. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. We will see you next time.